Hey everybody, so I'm having a really wild experience right now. Starting about an hour ago, I began looking online for military records for my grandfather. Now, my grandfather was dead before I was born, so I don't really know anything about the man. My father never really talked about his family. I never met any of my grandparents on his side. So, um, just out of curiosity, I wanted to see if I could find the military records from when my grandfather served in World War II. And I actually uncovered a treasure trove of information. And so you'll notice I'm kind of sitting off to the side right now. It's because I'm going to use this side over here to put some information up on this video, add some info to this video to try to make it all make sense. So my first name is Alexander, and I'm named after my father, who's also named Alexander. Now, his father's name is Charles, which is our middle name. So I'm named after my grandfather. His middle name is my middle name is after my grandfather. His middle name is after his father. And we had always suspected that Charles's father, which would be my great-grandfather's name, was Alexander, and that my dad was named after him, and therefore Anna was named after him also. But in searching for Charles L., for searching for his military records, I actually came across a whole bunch of other information that I never would have suspected. And an hour ago, I didn't know, and it's crazy that now I know so much more about my grandfather's family than I did before. So first and foremost, just to go all the way back, Charles, who was my grandfather, who I never met because he was deceased before I was born, Charles's father's name was indeed Alexander, and his wife's name was Anna. And Alexander and Anna had multiple children. In the 1920 census, Alexander listed his occupation as woodsman and listed that he had his own woods. So I don't know if he owned property and that's how he made his living, was by chopping wood. But that's what the 1920 census had. At the time, Charles, who would have been my grandfather, was only a year old because he was born in 1919. There was a 1920 census. But they also had other children. Now, Alexander, Charles's father, was born 1867, died 1974. That's what we know according to Ancestry.com. That death date is wrong. That Charles died in 1974. Alexander was born in 1867. Sorry, I was writing too fast and I typoed. So, but he was born approximately 1867, and his wife was born approximately 1883. At the time of the 1920 census, they had 4 children. Russell, Alice, Charles, who I mentioned was only a year old, and another child named Alexander. So my father was named after his grandfather, Alexander, the one born in 1867, but he also would have had an uncle, Alexander, and Alexander E. But my father never talked about his family at all growing up, and partly because, again, my grandfather died, was only 54, and he died in a fire. So, it's crazy to me, though, that I just found out that my dad would have had aunts and uncles that he never talked about. And I don't know if he ever had any contact with them or not, but he never spoke of them. They were never brought up. The information was never shared to us, which, looking back now, is kind of confusing and disappointing because now there's these other people that I don't know anything about that were a part of my family history. And there's a struggle in that too because my father is also deceased, so I can't ask him. So going back to Alexander, born 1867, we think that his father's name was Charles and that he was a German immigrant working on the railroad in Pennsylvania. We did find one record one time at the Historic Railroad Museum that's located in Pennsylvania. And it would kind of make sense then that Alexander would name one of his children Charles because that was his father's name. So then you have Charles, He was born in 1919, like I said, 1920 census. He was a year old. That's how I know that for sure. He was enlisted World War II, 1943. So I haven't gotten his complete military records yet, and I would like to at some point continue investigating his military records. But for now, I'm just excited to be able to find out the year that he was actually enlisted. And then, like I mentioned briefly, he did die in 1974 in a house fire. And there is a copy of the local paper in Altoona that ran that morning or that day, talking about the fire that had happened that morning, the one that he had perished in. And the location is called Juniata Gap, is where it was actually at. But it's the Altoona local newspaper that ran that story. And so then you go down to my father, Alexander Sr., and then you have me, Alexander II. But it's just interesting to me that before an hour ago, I didn't know any of this. And now, because we have the internet, we have such instant access to data, because we can catalog and database things, which for all of you young millennials, like all of you who were born, post-internet, you may want to look up the history and learn a little bit about the history of the internet and what it came from, because it was originally designed for colleges to share data sets. And this is a primary example of why that use of the internet is so important, why the advent of the internet is so important, because it allows us to catalog all of this data and makes it accessible to us no matter where we are. I never would have found this information pre-internet, because the only way to dig up information would have been to go to that actual place and to dig around through city records and county records and hope just by random chance almost that something would come up. This, someone who's already done all of the work for me, all I have to do is put forth the effort and looking for it. But again, this is just, it's so interesting to me that I learned so much in just this little time that I didn't know before. And now, in a way, like, my life is forever changed because I know more about my grandfather and his family than I did the prior 30 years of my life. Like, right now in this moment, I know more. And I'm going to continue looking. Like I said, I would like to get a hold of the rest of his military records. I would like to get a hold of any other information I can find. But this is definitely an exciting moment for me. And a mixed blessing, because now that I realize that there is some more information out there, there's also some sadness because my own father in his lifetime also was never really able to find anything about his father or his grandfather. And he's no longer with us. And I, on the other hand, am extremely blessed because I was able to find this information very, very easily. It just took some effort and knowing how to look and knowing where to look and putting these things together. So, again, I consider myself very blessed that I was able to do that. And at the same time, a little sad that I'm not able to share this information with my father. And also a little disappointed and confused regarding my own father and why he never disclosed this kind of information to his family, or why he never talked about it with his family. And I may never know that, but I definitely take some solace in knowing that I know more now than I did an hour ago. So